Welcome to the Fear and Greed Business Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. Something a little different for you today. You might have noticed in recent weeks a growing campaign to limit the exposure of children to social media. Currently, kids are allowed to have their own profiles on most platforms from the age of 13, but there's a push to increase it to 16 when they may be a little more resilient, a bit less vulnerable, and better equipped to deal with what these platforms throw at them. The campaign is called 36 Months, representing the 3 years between 13 and 16. And one of the organisers of the campaign is radio presenter Michael Wipfli, better known as Wippa, in fact, universally known as Wippa, one-third of the Nova Sydney breakfast show Fitzy and Wippa with Kate Ritchie. Of course, Fear and Greed is a proud partner of Nova Entertainment. Wippa, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Sean, thank you, mate. Just to clarify, you would agree that I am the most crucial one-third of that breakfast show.
Yeah, I like to put the emphasis on the middle syllable, or the middle person in that instance. Fitzy Wippa and Kate. Yeah, no, I'm with you totally.
Thank you. As much as we love them, I'm without question the most important in that lineup. Sean, thank you for having me on, mate, and thank you for taking an interest in 36 months.
So 3 extra years, how much difference would it make between 13 and 16?
Yeah, it would make a hell of a lot. There's two parts to it. And I think the first part is if we look at what goes on in the adolescent years and how challenging that is, when you throw social media and smart algorithms into the mix, when you have vulnerable kids that are trying to discover themselves, that's a dangerous play. The other side of the coin is considering 36 months, that 3 years, to give back. Like, what can we do in those 3 years if the kids aren't on social media? And what skills can they acquire and learn, knowing that if they choose to get onto social media at the age of 16, they can be armed with everything to expect and know what to do and how to handle themselves if required.
So I suppose when I was reading up about 36 months, my youngest is 15 and she is on social media. And that's exactly, I thought, how would I do it? And what would I do with all that spare time she has?
It's a beautiful thing to talk about. And, there's some horror stories out there, as you'd know, Sean. And, a lot of those stories sort of led us to where we are now. But if we do consider the idea that 36 months is handed back, and that's a chance for families to reunite, that's a chance for kids to discover themselves, the program and the teaching in there. I want my kids, when they're old enough. My eldest is 9, Ted's only 9 years old, but he's already talking about Snapchat. But I love the idea that he'll have the right teachings, that if he's approached inappropriately or he feels flat or left out or he feels judged, and at the moment, that's what the kids are doing. They constantly feel judged. And sadly, a lot of this is to do with teenage girls as well and young girls who constantly feel like on a daily basis they are being ranked. So they're being ranked on these platforms. They go to bed feeling judged and ranked, and then they wake up to see where they stand and how they're ranked on that morning. And then their day continues again. And that has had a huge psychological change and is causing great psychological damage.
The amazing thing, even if you take it before the ages of 13, I think there was an eSafety Commissioner report which said that kids aged 12 to 13 aren't just on one platform.
Yeah.
They're already on average, they're using 3 different apps. I suppose the question is, has the horse bolted for kids that are 13 now? And are we talking about the 5 and 6 and 7-year-olds and doing what we can for them?
It's a great point, because I think if you were to bring this law in, which we're hoping we can push through, and I think we'll get there, you have to consider that those that are sort of in, you'd have to grandfather it. Those that are in, and then those that are under, I mean, that would be a government decision. Those that are under aren't. So it would be an investment in the future for our kids. But you know what? Even just doing that, if you consider, Sean, changing the law to 16, that's one thing. Enforcing it in the platforms, that's another thing. But at least it would give the power back to the parents. It would be You'd be able to sit there as a parent and say, no, you don't do that, because it's the same as robbing a bank or, I don't know, shooting a gun. You don't do that because it's illegal, guys.
Yeah,
that's
drinking where it stands under the age of 18. Yep.
Correct. I mean, imagine if it was just left to the parents. So you could go down to the bottle shop and walk in there and grab a bottle of whiskey and say, well, Dad said it would be all right. Yep. That's just not how it should be. And now that it's been, so long a good 10, 15 years of data, now's the time to pull the trigger on it and be brave enough, and as a government have the guts to say, we now have the data that says this does not work. Social media has its place, absolutely. Smartphones have their place. That's not a war against social media or smartphones. It's a war against trying to preserve our kids' mental health in those ages of 13 to 16.
Okay, so you need legislation. I mean, your point there, which is it is up to the parents, of course, but if there's legislation that says it's illegal, it probably makes it easier for the parents' argument to the children. Where's the legislation up to? It's federal legislation, I presume?
It is federal legislation. At the moment, the E-Safety Commissioner is able to try and enforce because, as we say, there's no real age gate if you were to take a
Yeah,
lot of these
yeah.
platforms. There's a parental law out of the US, which was governed in 1998, which roughly has the age of 13. And that exists also here in Australia, but has it been enforced or is it enforceable? No. So what we need to do is lift that to 16, make it hardcore, make it illegal that you can't be on these platforms up until the age of 16, and therefore have it understood by everybody. Have it actually listed, named, and spoken about, so we do have that law in place and the parents can be empowered once again to have the right influence on their kids that they should have.
Stay with me, Wippa. We'll be back in a minute. I'm speaking to radio presenter Michael Wipfli. What about platforms like Meta, which of course is Facebook and Insta, and TikTok and Snapchat and LinkedIn? Well, probably LinkedIn isn't quite appropriate or isn't relevant. But what about those platforms? Have you had any engagement with them? Because it's against their interests, I'd imagine.
Well, it is against their interests, but what's interesting is, as a country, imagine if we were able to put our hand up and say, as a nation, that we're one of the first to be able to say this doesn't work for our kids. So we could be world leaders in this. I mean, it's state by state in America, and that's kind of what we've been encouraged by as well. Because as you list the different types of platforms, yes, they fall under social media, the social media category, which is any platform that creates engagement by addictive features. So it's your continuous scrollings, it's your like, your shares, all those things that make your child the product. Because if the kids weren't on there and there wasn't, it wouldn't exist. It'd be like horse racing without gambling. So the reality is that these platforms are selling your child's attention span. That's how they make their money.
Yeah, it's frightening. You've already got some backing for the campaign, obviously. I know in New South Wales, Chris Minns, the Premier, has come out in support. How important it is that you get high profile as well as people signing petitions and things like that behind it?
Yeah, that's been fantastic. Premier Minns came out and said something needs to be done, which was great. So we continue that conversation. The Prime Minister also congratulated 36 months as an initiative worth following. You know, even on a corporate front, we had Hyundai join us the other day. They put their hand up. They've got a program which is called Progress for Humanity, and that certainly aligns with what we're doing at 36 months. So we're encouraging people to go to 36months.com.au to sign the petition, but also we're throwing it out there as well. And this has been a great reality check. We've been encouraging people on Instagram, and I do see the irony. We're encouraging them to post a photo of when they were 13. And that's a great reality check, because you look back at that photo, and I certainly know at the age of 13 for who I was, as I stood there in my Hard Rock Cafe t-shirt at a tennis lesson, I know that I wouldn't have been mentally able to handle the impact and the challenge that social media can bring on young minds.
What's the size of the prize here? If we can get the age to 16 and we can limit, if not totally abolish, use of social media for kids under that age, what is the prize?
The prize for me is being able to hand out the education required. The prize for me is being able to give the kids back to the families and the parents, because if you could imagine having a stranger come into your house who then chooses what they're going to show your kids to influence them, that's really what you're doing. You're inviting your kids into another world where they're attracted by the smart algorithm. So if you can cut that off and say, hey, come back into the family, come back into this world, and learn the skills through 36months.com.au, we can give you the skills that will actually take you into that next phase of your life. And the other thing is too, once you're given back and once you're out of that world of social media as a young person, you don't realize, but the natural skills and the resilience that you need in life that's organically created by you doing other things with your friends is huge. So that parental free play amongst peers is another part to this. So
Yeah.
get them off the screens, get them back with their friends, get them riding around the streets, do what you're meant to do as a kid. That's part of the decision making, that's part of the growth, that's part of the resilience required to be a young adult.
It's funny, listening to you, Wippa, I just have a sense of guilt. But I think that's okay. My kids, I mentioned my youngest is 15, but I have a sense of guilt now just thinking about this because I have allowed them to do that. But that
Sean,
probably is okay because it's just realisation.
that is realization. And I've guilt myself because I mean we talk about 16 and we want that age change and we think that's an achievable outcome. A lot of the parents are saying, make it 18. And then a lot of
Yep.
parents are saying, well, I've got a problem. And I fall into that category. I've
Yeah.
got the problem of sitting there, and if it's quiet time, as much as I'm watching a movie with the kids, I'm on the phone and I'm on social
Yeah.
media and I'm doing things and I'm wanting to be keeping up to speed with things. And it becomes a trap. And you know, it's sad when you find yourself lying in bed next to your wife. You might both be on social media, or you go out for dinner and one runs to the bathroom and then you're back on social media again. You feel that trap and you feel that pull. But I'm 44 years old, so I understand and I recognize it. For a young
Yeah.
mind and that prefrontal cortex that the professionals talk about that doesn't finish developing until you're 20 years old, that's part of your emotion, that's part of your decision making, that's part of your growth. That part, you know, that awareness doesn't exist in that underdeveloped mind. So I just can't imagine what it would be like for the young ones.
Wippa, I'm totally on board. I'm going to go and try and find a photo of myself when I was
Please,
13, as
Sean,
embarrassed as I
shock
am.
everyone.
I will. Thank you for talking to Fear and Greed.
I really appreciate the time, mate. Thanks for the care.
That was Michael Wipfli, 1/3 of the Nova Sydney breakfast team, Fitzy and Wippa, with Kate Ritchie. This is the Fear and Greed business interview. Join us every morning for the full episode of Fear and Greed, daily business news for people who make their own decisions. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.